Next, what would you do if someone accused you of bullying them online and it wasn't true? Well, that is what happened to online business consultant and anti-bullying campaigner Lisa Johnson. She was called a bully and fraud in a Facebook post by Emma Hammond after the pair fell out over Emma's refusal to pay for a course she signed up to from Lisa's business. After months of trying to get her to apologise for the false accusations, Lisa decided to sue for libel. And she has just won her High Court fight and has been awarded £25,000 in damages, the maximum that could have been awarded. Lisa Johnson joins me now on the programme. Thank you, Lisa, for joining us here on Women's Hour.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Can you tell us how this all unfolded in a bit more detail?
Yeah, sure. So as a business consultant, I have lots of different courses online, and one of them was a mastermind. And Emma came into the mastermind in 2020. So it was a long time ago. And she came in, she did quite well for the first few months, was corresponding, seemed to be doing okay. And then suddenly she kind of faltered, like we didn't see her as much on the calls. And so we checked in with her, and she said she might be changing her business. She doesn't know whether she's going to be in business anymore. And obviously what we do is when people join a course, they can pay over, a certain amount of time because we want to make it affordable for people. But what they can't do is just stop paying if they feel like it. And she kind of wrote to us and said, you know what, I can't afford it anymore. But online, she was saying things that were very different. It looked as if she could definitely afford it. And so we said, okay, well, we have to go through our normal policy. So that will get taken to credit control, and credit control got hold of that and eventually went to small claims court, and we won. But I decided not to collect the money. I thought, I was a bit worried. What if she didn't have enough money? I don't want to be one of those people that goes after people that can't afford it. So I decided not to. So even though we'd won, I just left it at that. And that's pretty much all that happened. I thought we'd left on okay terms. She had complained that she didn't get what she wanted out of the course eventually, but I think that was just because it was another way to try and get some money back.
Right.
So we just left it at that. And then 18 months later, and I guess you could say she was a competitor online, she did the same kind of things that I did, but not exactly the same, which is why she was learning from me. And then I don't even think it was 18 months later. I think it was probably about 14 months later. I actually was on the Orient Express with my husband for his 50th birthday. And, we'd been going through a really tough time. And so I wanted to have this really special weekend. And then suddenly I wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning to over 100 messages on my phone. Everybody saying, have you seen this? And I'm like, what could have possibly happened? Like, no one is upset with me right now. And so I have a look, and on Emma's Facebook page, she has written in capital letters, I was bullied by the fraud and con artist Lisa Johnson. And then goes on to explain in several paragraphs how just lots of lies, basically saying things like, I forced her to come into the program, to the course. I made her sign up for it, even though I knew she couldn't afford it. The course had nothing in it and was all fluff. So many things that I didn't help her, even though I knew that she was struggling with mental health. Like every single thing she'd said was a lie. And unfortunately, the first thing I did was second guess myself, as we do.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, no one would say this if there wasn't, something. What have I forgotten that I've done? And literally went through all this correspondence because there were 400 comments from people that are in my industry. We share, an audience online. She called me a bully on there, and people were asking, is it this one? And putting pictures of me, and some people were saying horrible
really
comments,
vicious
like,
by the sounds of it. Yeah.
Is it the big girl? All of those kind of things. And I got worried. There was lots of angry faces. And the first thing I did was just look back at all our correspondence, just to check if I'd missed something. But I'd gone over and above for this person. And, I had made sure that I was posting her to other places to help, all different kinds of things. And so then I thought, well, what's happening here? Is she okay? So the first thing I did was write her, say, just on Messenger, hey, Emma, are you okay? I'm worried about you. This doesn't sound like you. What can you just enlighten me to what I've done? You know that the things you've written on there are lies. but I want to help you if I can. Tell me what I'm not seeing. Because she'd said in one of the threads that she'd tried to kill herself because of me. And,
So
that
you were
I was
genuinely worried and genuinely trying to do your bit.
genuinely
She
worried.
eventually did take the post down, but the damage
No,
was
she
already done. Oh,
didn't.
she didn't.
Facebook did. No, she
Facebook
wouldn't
did,
take it
right.
down. So I basically, when she didn't answer that
Mm,
message, I then thought, well, the only thing I can do is write on the actual post, which I hate doing because it inflames situations usually. But I just wrote on it and said, hey, none of this is true. You know this, Emma. Would you give me permission to put all our correspondence on this page so that people can make up their own minds rather than you making up all these lies? She deleted my comment immediately and carried on. And that was the first second that I knew she's doing this on purpose. This
yeah.
isn't her being mistaken or anything. This is an all-out attack. And then I didn't know what else to do. I kind of was crying in a corner, not thinking, how is my business going to survive this? There were so many people. It had been shared 12 times into big business groups. And so the first thing I did was call a lawyer and say, what can I do about this? I'm really worried. And he said to report it to Facebook. So I did. And eventually at 5 p.m., Facebook took the post down. But by then, the damage had been done.
Yeah. And then how did you get to that position where you thought, you know what, I'm going to take legal action?
Yeah, so I wasn't going to take any legal action. I just wanted to send a cease and desist, just say, stop doing this for whatever reason you're doing it. And then 3 days later, she started selling. She hadn't sold anything for a year. She hadn't been on Facebook for a year. She suddenly started selling a program that was near enough a copy of mine. It was exactly the same. And so that made me realize maybe she's doing this to get attention. Maybe she's doing it to get my audience. So maybe she's doing it for PR. I just didn't know why she was doing it, but I knew that she could do it again.
Yeah.
And lots of people were calling me, potential clients were calling me. Is there any truth in this? What really happened? And I was having to explain something over and over again that didn't happen. And people quite a lot think there's no smoke without fire. So something must have happened. But in this case, there really hadn't been anything. And so I decided to have a look online and see if I could see a case. Had this been done before? Had somebody already brought a case to court in my industry, on the online coaching kind of consulting industry? And I couldn't see a single case. And so, of people like me, not big businesses. And so I thought, well, there needs to be one. So if anybody's going to do it, I'm going to do it, because as soon as I put out there what had happened to me, so many people came forward saying, this has happened to me.
That's really interesting. And I want to pick up on that. Do stay with us, Lisa. I want to bring in Lia. Lia Perin, is a solicitor at Taylor Hampton, a firm specialising in privacy and defamation law. Thank you for joining us, Lia. Listening to Lisa there, she just said that she's had so many people getting in touch with her saying, this has happened to me as well. What do you make of this case? Is it common that comments made on social media can lead to a court case?
Well, I think it's increasingly common and actually a reflection of the evolution of technology. Whilst historically the ability and the means to publish information was concentrated in a very small number of wealthy press barons, the internet has made potential publishers of everyone. And despite this, social media users don't necessarily understand that their exercise of free speech is subject to the same restraints and responsibilities as editors of national newspapers. So activity on social media is ripe for potential disputes and ultimately litigation.
That's really, really interesting. And in this case specifically, I understand the judge granted the highest amount of damages possible. I mean, what does that say about the nature of this case?
Well, actually, it's quite interesting. I think damages for defamation can run much higher, so into sort of the hundreds of thousands. But from what I understand from this case, when you issue a claim form, you can cap the claim depending on the amount of damages that you're claiming. So in Lisa's case, her claim would have been capped at £25,000. But what's really interesting about it is the judge actually said that potentially he would have awarded more damages if the case hadn't been capped at that level. So obviously it means that the judge has taken this case incredibly seriously. I think also the fact that the defendant did not engage with the process had a material impact on the damages awarded.
Yeah. Lisa, were you expecting such an outcome?
No, if I'm honest, I knew that I would win the case because I didn't realize at the time, but actually the proof is on her to prove I am a fraud. The proof isn't on me to prove I am not. And I had all of the evidence ready to kind of show that I hadn't done any of the things she'd said, which I didn't actually need. So I knew I would win because I knew I was telling the truth. But what I didn't expect is to get 100% of my costs also awarded, because that's quite rare.
Yeah. And Lia, turning back to you, a question that I imagine many of our listeners might be thinking, what can and can't you say about someone online? Where are those boundaries?
It's a very interesting question. I think the tort of defamation exists to regulate the balance between freedom of expression and the protection of one's right to reputation. So it's entirely fact sensitive, but in essence, if you make a statement that has caused or is likely to cause serious harm to an individual's reputation and cannot be defended by the defense of truth or honest opinion, then that would be considered defamatory. So in essence, I would avoid saying anything which will be published, especially to a large number of people, because that's a consideration that will cause harm to an individual's reputation that is not true and that is malicious. So, for example, is not a genuine or honest belief that you hold.
Really, really interesting. Lisa, I know that you have talked about your experience of bullying in the past. I mean, I imagine that what happened to you must have been quite triggering, and considering that, it must have been quite hard for you to take on this case.
It was hard. As soon as it happened, it brought back all of the memories of being bullied at school. I was bullied really badly at school. And I'm an anti-bullying campaigner now. I'm an ambassador for a brilliant charity called Bullies Out. And, you know, I think that's why she used the word bully, because she knew the effect that would have on me because I've been bullied. So, yeah, it was hard. But as soon as people started talking to me in the industry saying, you know, we don't know anyone that's ever taken this to court. We don't think you can fight it. We don't think anything can be done. You know, clients were basically blackmailing people saying, if you don't give me refunds or if you don't give me this and that, I'm going to put bad stuff all over social media. And so I wanted them to, I already have a large following, and I wanted people to be able to see that actually you need to think twice before you put something online. And I knew I was best placed to do it. So even when it got hard, I pushed through because I knew that people in the future would maybe not have this happen to them just because of this case.
And just expanding on what you've just said, what would you say, Lisa, to others who are facing a similar situation?
I'd say the first thing to do is reach out to the person. I still think I did the right thing, even though she didn't engage, because sometimes, you know, it will be a misunderstanding. You will be able to sort it out. But if that doesn't happen, the first thing to do is, you know, get a lawyer on board and cease and desist. If you haven't got insurance, I didn't have insurance for legal. I wish I did. But if you haven't got insurance for that, get insurance for that as a business, because it's going to make things a lot easier. You know, if we're completely honest about it, we don't know if we will ever get that money back, because it's a whole different process to actually get the money once you've won. But that I wasn't in it for the money. But for a smaller business than mine, you know, £35,000 cost is not a small amount.
And Lia, a similar question to you from a legal angle. Those who might not feel like they've got the confidence to even pick up the phone and call a lawyer, but they've been hugely offended and upset by comments online. What would you say to them?
Well, I think I would mirror what Lisa has said. I think when something false or defamatory is written about you, it can be absolutely devastating. And it's important to remedy the situation as quickly as possible, and also to protect you against future threats. So my advice would be, don't suffer in silence. You know, do pick up the phone, speak to a solicitor who specialises in defamation, who can advise you as to the best course of action. I would also say that it is important to act as quickly as possible, because of the rule of limitation, a claimant has 1 year from the publication date to bring a claim.
That's interesting. So yeah,
it is important to sort of take steps as quickly as possible.
Thank you so much, Lisa Johnson there and Lia Perin, for joining us here on Women's Hour.